Welcome to Morgan 100. We're going to be looking at the work of a bonnet maker from his early days as an apprentice in 1988 right through to modern times. And we're going to see Chris Booth in Kent to have a look at his three-wheeler collection.
This was 1924, Grand Prix model again. I acquired this quite early on, in probably about 1963, 64. It was in a farm in Sussex and I paid £7 for it.
We'll be finding out about type approval and what has to change for the classic cars to get back into America. And we've got all the action from stage 2 at the FIA GT3 Championship from Adria in Italy. All in programme 4 of Morgan 100.
This central pencil line is all the bonnet maker needs to guide him during the stamping of the louvres. Once the first one has been stamped out, each successive louvre is inserted using the previous one as a guide, resting against a template. Usually the bonnet maker counts aloud as successive louvres are inserted, with an apprentice operating the fly press.
That apprentice was John Bishop, who joined in 1985 as an apprentice. John, do you remember those days?
Vividly, yes.
Yeah. What was it like being an apprentice?
You were always pushed and pulled around because you were always the youngest in sort of thing. But you got a lot of respect, you know, and you had a lot of respect for the older blokes as well, sort of thing. But
you fascinated me watching you make bonnets in 2002 when I was remaking Handmade. And I think the aero bonnet is special to you, isn't it?
I started, you know, right from the embryo stage of development with the aero bonnet. You know, I pushed it through from the word go, really. You know, the car was developed by Chris Lawrence and the team over there, sort of thing. But yeah, I was just allowed to run with it, basically, and I made the first prototype and it just went from there, really.
In terms of what you're doing today, I mean, I always think of you as John the Bonnet Maker. Do you find it more challenging doing the skinning of a car to doing something bespoke like a bonnet?
There's an element of bespokeness to this. You know, anything which has got a handmade element to it is bespoke, because at the end of the day, nothing is the same twice. You know, even putting a press panel on, they will all fit slightly differently, because you're going onto a handmade wooden frame for a start off.
Would you say it's still hand skill based, or?
Yes, very much so. But it has changed. You know, we've got a lot of laser cut panels come in and a lot of press panels come in now. But it's the combination between the two. It's the new technologies and still using the old hand building technology, hand building skills, I should say. So I think, you know, side by side sort of thing, and the combination is right. As a company, I feel we had to sort of move forward and embrace a lot of the new technologies for economic reasons, you know, more than anything else. Like, you know, and it's, you know, it gives a lot more flexibility to the company to be able to go into new markets and produce more cars as well. Yeah.
But you still prefer using hand snips rather than powered snips? I've seen other people use powered snips.
Yes, well, we do use both, but predominantly we're still using hand snips for, you know, for actual panel work and bonnets and
hand snips by choice.
To be honest, it's better. You know, electric nibblers and things like that, they're okay to a degree, but the accuracy level is not anywhere near as good as somebody with a pair of snips in their hands and using their eyes.
So is it pretty fair to say that since 1989, that's when you finished your apprenticeship, about 5 bonnet makers? That means a 1 in 5 chance of anybody who owns a car from 1989 to current date, 1 in 5 chance that you made the bonnet on that
yeah,
car.
yeah. It's probably higher than that, to be honest, because there was myself and Barry White who initially trained me back in '85 and got me on the road of bonnet making sort of thing. You know, for many, many years, it was just me and Barry.
So we've had 24 years you've been at the factory.
Yeah.
You got another 24 years in you, do you think?
I hope so. I hope
Yeah?
so. I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. I love the element of seeing people coming in and seeing their faces. You know, that often people will save all their lives to own one of these, and the magic involved in that when they actually finally come to pick their car up or come and watch it being made. There's something else. That is job satisfaction you cannot buy.
Yeah.
And it's job satisfaction which very few places have nowadays, sadly. And,
Well, John Bishop, thank you very much
you're
indeed.
welcome. Thank you.
If you go to Rolvenden in Kent, it's about 10 miles north of Rye on the south coast, you'll come across Falstaff Antiques. It's been here since 1964. It's one of those shops full of little treasures. For us, it's full of a treasure of a special kind. I'm here to meet Chris Booth, who, with his wife Marion, runs Falstaff Antiques. Chris, welcome to Morgan 100. Where's the treasure?
Okay, well the treasure is behind the shop. The Morgans are in the museum, which is food in the back garden.
Wow. Chris, it's a great collection of cars. Can you tell me a little bit about each one?
The first one here is the grey one. It's 1922 Grand Prix model. A Swiss MAG engine of 1100cc, and when I first acquired it, it was being stored in an attic in South Norwood. It would have been 1965, I think.
So one of your first cars?
Well, probably number 6, I should think.
Number 6.
This is a 1927 Aero fitted with the British Anzani engine of around about 1100cc again, and over the years, particularly through the 70s, it was perhaps the most used Morgan I had, and it was proved itself to be quite reliable, going to the Isle of Man and to Ireland a couple of times.
This one looks, dare I say it, a bit younger. No, is it?
It's 1934, it's a Super Sports with the overhead valve wood-cooled matchless engine. It's the first Morgan I ever owned. This is a Super Sports Aero of 1930. It has the overhead valve 1100cc JAP engine. It's a 2-speeder, and it's probably the third Morgan I acquired in 1962 when it was being advertised in exchange for a shotgun.
Am I right in thinking this is one of the earlier F4s?
This one was built in 1935, a year after the first one. It uses the 10 horsepower Ford engine, which was available in 1935. 3-speed reverse gearbox, the same as the twins that use the same box, but a totally different chassis. It's a press steel Z section chassis, much the same as a current 4-wheeler Morgan.
How old is this one?
This one is 1914. It's a standard model made at the time using the 964cc JAP engine, and it's probably as basic as Morgans were at the time. Follows on very much from the original design of being as simple and light as possible. This was rather a special, built up by Jeff Harris in about 1928-29. He won a gold medal driving it at Brooklands in a 1-hour speed trial in 1929, but that's about the only competitive event that's ever been recorded for it.
What's the function of this?
It was purely to give extra clearance over the back wheel, not for the tyre itself, but for the Hartford friction damper, which was on a hoop over the back wheel.
Well, thanks a lot, Chris. Is that it?
Well, there are some more, but they're not normally on view.
Ah. More treasure.
This is a 1932 R-Type family model. Probably quite rare because there were a lot of them made at the time. They've been very popular as a family model, but very few have survived, probably only a handful.
I can't tell at a glance what engine we've got underneath that bonnet. Can we have a quick look?
Yes. It's a Jap engine, 1100cc, side valve air cooled. I always say it's one of the hottest Morgan engines, hot in as much as it gets hot. Not a particularly powerful engine, but seems to go along quite well. The first run out with it last weekend, it did overheat and come to a stop, but it went all right for the rest of the day. It did over 100 miles with it.
This looks very familiar.
This is an Aero model, 1930. The overhead valve water cooled Jap again, 1100cc. The Aero model I think is one of the better versions, as that they can do everything a bit better than others. There's a bit more foot room, they're wider footwell down here, so you can put your feet out around the pedals, which on the Super Sports is very tight, and they're easier to get into. It's a more open cockpit.
So is that your entire collection, Chris?
Not entirely. There's some more still to be done, and there's some more projects in the workshop.
So this is the workshop.
It's where most of the things get done, yes. There's never enough space.
Well, it looks like a reasonable garage workshop to me. What's that car?
This is a early Aero, 1924, the overhead valve Blackburn engine, and the aluminium discs were a very popular option at the time. Almost everything is available, or has been available in recent years. It's just a matter of how much you want to spend.
So if I start with a radiator cap.
As much as that? Well, that's quite a good start.
That's a good start.
Yes, but they're hard to find.
Oh, I see, an original radiator cap. So Chris, this is the big project, this chassis?
Yes, this will be a fairly major thing to get finished. I've got all the parts for the engine now, and it is just a case of making the bodywork, which is I've just started to plan out, and I hope that'll get well underway this year. It's the Harold Beat record car, which he did 104 miles an hour with in 1925. It's currently, as I'm restoring it, to its 1928 form, which he did some modifications to it in 28, and they're all on the car today.
Well, Chris, it's been a fascinating visit. Thank you very much. We
Right.
look forward to seeing your #1 car again later on in the year. Thank you.
Right, thank you very much.
Matt Welch joined in 2003 and he's part of the development and homologation team. Matt, welcome to Morgan 100. Development, we kind of know what that is. Homologation, big word. Is that all to do with type approval?
Yeah, it's all the crash testing, ensuring the cars meet all the emissions tests, all the safety tests, and making sure that people can't hurt themselves or the cars can't hurt people or the environment while they're in their use.
Who controls type approval?
In Europe, we use the VCA, who
VCA?
are Vehicle Certification Agency, and they get all their the European regulations and directives come from Brussels, and then in the US it's NHTSA, do all the safety side of things.
There's been a lot of talk lately that the classic 4.4s, +4, Roadster, etc., is going to be in a position where it fails type approval. Is that true?
No, there was the big one for the traditional car or classic car was the pedestrian protection, which is a new directive regulation coming in 2012. But they've just launched a new version of the whole vehicle type approval, specially designed for small volume manufacturers, and that excludes the pedestrian protection and the ones that were going to be the big tripping stones for the classic car. So that now ensures that we can carry on doing the classic car as it is, in the same style and things that it is currently.
Charles, we've heard what Matthew Welsh said about type approval and federal approval. Rick Frazee emailed us from the States and wants to know, when will we ever see a 4-seater Roadster or +4 or whatever in the States? What do you think?
Well, I've just returned from California, and I was there for a week, and there with Dennis Clavis. I was driving one of his old Plus 8s, actually, I think about a 2000 year car around Los Angeles. And that's made me absolutely passionate about trying to get the classic Morgan back into America, to be honest. Now, there's two reasons for this. One is that, of course, while I was there, and this is May 2009, General Motors went into liquidation. And I was there while sort of the whole of the industry was in meltdown and collapsing. And a lot of people were losing their livelihoods, losing their jobs. And it's a complete disaster, to be honest. Now, one of the reasons for that is that legislation has forced the American car makers to make cars that customers do not want to buy. And they are now faced with a problem because cars have to get smaller to be lower carbon, and cars have to get smaller because they need to be more economical and use less fuel. Now, the problem they've got is their legislation forces them to produce these great big trucks or cars that can withstand an impact at the back from a 3-ton truck with a 7-litre engine. And that is just not sustainable anymore in 2009. So I would love, on the back of a low-carbon agenda, to get the classic Morgan back into the States as an economical, not particularly fast, but very exciting to drive, low-carbon sports car. And so I'm going to try and get the 4.4 Sport back into the States through the DOT. I may not succeed, because they may be head in the sand and completely ridiculous about this legislative requirement. But to be honest, the number of people who've lost their jobs, who have probably come pretty near to suicide, I'm sure far outweighs the number of lives they've saved as a result of their ridiculous safety legislation.
Matthew explained that there's quite a lot of engineering involved to meet current specifications. If you invest in the 4.4 Sport and say you get that up to spec, does that mean that probably a 4-seater is out of the question?
Let's be absolutely clear about this. The legislation has got to change. Morgan hasn't got to change. The legislation has got to change, because our cars are completely eligible for Europe. They're completely safe. People who have accidents in Morgans don't tend to get injured, and we produce a very, very safe car. So it's the legislation in America that's got to change, not the Morgan sports car.
Who will you contact about that in America?
The government in America.
Yeah, you will deal directly with them?
Well, we deal with through the DOT. We deal directly with the government in America, and of course we have our own representative, Lance Tunig,
and
who speaks to the government, who speaks to the DOT.
And that's ongoing at the moment?
We retain him as one of our advisors.
That's fantastic. Charles, thank you very much.
Welcome to Italy. For the first time in its 3 and a bit seasons, the FIA GT3 Championship has come to Adria near Venice, a unique and tiny circuit with a tight and twisty track and the only indoor paddock we've ever seen. The teams have taken to it very well. Remember, they've never seen it before, so this is all new for all the teams, as is our pace car for this season, the Wiesmann GT, leading them away around their formation lap, now pulling off into pit lane, leaving the two Matek Fords on the front row of the grid. Lunardi, the poleman on the right of your picture, nearest the camera now, is in control of the start. He looks up above the track to the bridge. The lights there are red. That holds them back at 60-70 kilometres an hour until the lights go green, when the chief starter says that the first race here at Adria this weekend is go, and they are 4 wide coming towards us into turn 1 at 200 kilometres an hour. Lunardi's got away with it, but next to him Walter Salas has been monstered by Christopher Nygaard in the Fisher Racing 4 GT, but it's still 4 GT, 4 GT, 4 GT. We had a little ride there with Manuel Rodriguez, qualified 17th and right in the thick of it. But look, the other Hexis Aston Martin is right up there as well in 4th place. And Ferrari looking stronger than ever. Morgan there as well. Sully's behind in 3rd place, hanging on. Aston Martin behind that. And then the Morgan. And look at this. That's Stefano Gattuso being punished there. Dimitri Engelbert, that was second place. That's third, that's fourth, that's fifth. Morgan in sixth place. 1 hour of racing, compulsory pit stop. Salles well ahead of Nygaard now. Akari through on the inside, and Gattuso's going as well. Engelbert's going as well. Three of them in one corner. Akari, Gattuso and Engelbert just went straight past, and Jeffrey Horion as well in the Porsche. So 4 cars have gone through there, and it does suggest that Nygaard has got a problem in this car. Gattuso still in this battle with Engelbert, is on the inside, he's up the curb, Gattuso goes wide, Engelbert on the inside, Horion's having it as well, through goes the Porsche. Morgan and Porsche have just duffed up Stefano Gattuso, so it's all change, and they're moving forwards, but the Ford GT pair from Matek are clear at the front. Have a look at this, through goes the Morgan on the inside, almost on the grass there, and the Porsche of Jeffrey Horion sees the opportunity. Akari couldn't pass, and now he's being passed. Akari couldn't get on terms with the car in front of him, and he left the door open just momentarily for Dimitri Engelbert, who went straight through with no hesitation. Well, Thomas Akari, one of the quicker drivers in this series and in contention for the title this year. A moment of inattention. Here, look at it, he was concentrating on the car in front. Dimitri Engelbert behind him thought, oh ho, that's big enough for a Morgan, and through he went, forcing Akari to stay wide. Second place for the blue Ford coming towards us. The race leader has long gone. Dino Lenardi, who we saw. Oh, now Engelbert does the same thing. He runs wide, loses the back end. Through goes Horion, back goes Akari. That's how easy it is. Just got on the dirty stuff on the outside of the corner, gathered it all up, got ambitious, got back on the throttle, and bing, round it went. So now we're looking at Ford GT, first Ford GT, second Matek Ford. It is Dodonka, the reigning... Oh, look at that, they're all over the place. That Ferrari's right up in the air. That's the number 7 car. Let's have a look at that again. And it was the Corvette in the background, whacked the Ferrari, and it rode right up on top of the Morgan. We've never been to Adria before with the GT3s, and we've never done this before either, and that's Race in the Dark. The Morgan on the right of your picture is the man in control of the start now, and he's got to keep a steady speed as he brings the pack round onto the start-finish straight, looking up above the track at the red lights. They'll go green if the chief starter is happy that everything is in order, it's looking good, and they're looking terribly well behaved, and there's the green light, and away we go. We're on board in the cockpit of the number 4 car with Fred Macavici barrelling down the outside, and he's made up a couple of places, and indeed that Morgan's been monstered. Ferrari going wide, and it's the Thomas Much Ford in the lead. The Matek Ford of Thomas Much, number 1, has grabbed the lead. I think that's Macavici in second place, and then the Morgan just losing another place there. That was Phil Quaife going past Maxime Martin, the CRS car in third place, battling with Maxime Martin, the pole man, for that position. Brakes glowing in the darkness. And that's the pass. Quaife ran wide there, and through went Maxime Martin. The pole man gets back one place, so he's up to third again. But in front of him are the Aston Martin of Macavici, and ahead of that, the Ford GT of Thomas Much. And already the Ferrari dropping back. Morgan Pitwall, nail-biting time. Maxime Martin hands over to Gail Lusudio at the pit stops. A little group, oh, and the bonnet's come off. Flies up in the air, the bonnet is flying upwards and lands right in the middle of the track at the entrance to turn 1. Somebody's got to hit it. They have hit it, and it's a Ford GT. It is the number 2, and the radiator's gone. That's water gushing out. And look, the water has already claimed 1 victim, 2 victims. There are cars all over the place now. The safety car has been deployed to recover the cars and the bits of bodywork. And as you can see from the fact that the rooftop light is green, It's just changed to flashing amber. He was waving past the cars until he got to the race leader, but I don't think he's found him, and I think that's because nobody's quite sure who the race leader is. I think it is going to be, and the safety car's in, it's going to be the number 4 Aston Martin of Manuel Rodriguez. And a little grassy moment for Rodriguez, being passed but not for position. He's in the middle of the pack. It's the Morgan behind him that could take the lead here. It's the Morgan in second place by what, a second or two, but there's cars in between and there's not that far to go to the flag. Can that Morgan make it? I don't think so. Rodriguez has got an Audi safety cushion behind him. Gaël Lesoudier is doing his best to get past the Audi, but it doesn't matter. There's the checkered flag. Lots of confusion in the dark, and Matek will be fuming at the way they lost a 1-2. Hexis, as we say, very much in celebration mode for this win. The leaderboard is still all about Hexis and Auto GT Racing, the Aston Martin drivers and the Morgan crews filling this first page and the podium as well, with Gattuso and Palmer getting Ferrari's first podium of the year here in Italy.
Next month, we're off to Goodwood to join both 3- and 4-wheelers at the invitation of Brands Hatch Morgans. And we take a quick look at the sort of camaraderie that exists for the Morgan factory workers on their family fun day. We will have that drive to British Camp on the Malvern Hills and find out what we're doing in Little Hallingbury, where there's the coolest diner in the land. And just where have we seen those windows before? All in programme 5 of Morgan 100.